Okay. BRICS. So they're
Mm,
going to have a meeting soon, I think in a
yeah.
week time in
Mm,
Kazan, right? So the biggest thing is the BRICS payment system.
mm,
What is your take on that? I mean, again, we talked about a little bit in the past. It's not going
mm.
to replace dollar, but they are very seriously going to put into a payment system that is, at least we can say, it's an alternative to SWIFT, right? Is that what you're
Yeah.
going to do? It's going to
Yes,
happen.
I mean, this is again, to use the Chinese expression. I mean, it's the journey of 1,000 leagues, and you have to start with the single step, which is
Yeah.
often the most difficult. I think what we're going to get in Kazan is the first big step, and the first big step is to set up a unified messaging system, or at least not a unified messaging system, but one which works between all of these various countries.
Okay.
And I think the next step will probably be some kind of payment system that not only bypasses SWIFT, but which is also seen as sanction proofed, so that we'll
Yeah.
probably see transfers being made on behalf of companies via central banks, the BRICS central banks, as opposed to the Western system where banks are able to do it without the central banks being directly involved. It'll be a more complicated system initially, but then over time, as the new system starts to crystallized, it will get stronger and it will be more centralized. It will not
Hmm.
have the control at a single point in the way that the basically the Federal Reserve Board controls everything. Because if you're going to have to transfer funds from one country to another, you have to open accounts with the Fed in New York and things of that kind. So it's going to be a big journey, but I think they're going to make the first big step in Kazan. And I haven't read it, but I understand that the Russian chair has released a paper, a big paper, which gives some insight into what they're working upon. And can I just say it's a collective paper? It involves, it isn't just the Russians, but I understand that it's a very, very carefully judged and thought out and realistic document. And I've seen the way the Chinese carry out planning. I've seen the way the Russians do. And they do tend to work in a very systematic and methodical way, one step at a time. They don't like to get they don't think they can get from point A to point Z immediately. But the first step is often, is always the most difficult.
Yeah.
And I think they will cross that. They will take that first step in Kazan. I think that's going to be the main point issue of discussion, by the way.
Yeah. I think it's good to always have choices for countries, right?
Yeah.
For trade. One thing I didn't realize, which I find there's really little discussion in the
Mm.
mainstream media, is that Russia also wants commodity trade to control that part of it. So far, the commodity trade mainly is controlled by Chicago Board of Trade, and
Yeah.
including lots of the like grains and stuff like that, right? So one thing Russia seems interested is kind of like having a trade board for, let's say, grain.
Yeah.
Now that will have implications because now commodities price is kind of tricky. Of course, it's a supply and demand, but it's also because like the Chicago
Mm.
Trade Board, they trade commodity future, so they have impact of the pricing of the commodity
Yeah.
too because they trade future. Now, if and of course it's dollar denominated. So if and that giving them a power,
Mm.
the trade board at the power. So now Russia wants it to be more in control of that. So if BRICS also have some kind of a trading board for commodity,
Mm.
that will give Russia and I think BRICS in general combined power. Now that will actually have implications for the U.S. farm products. Agriculture is a big sector in the U.S., isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is. The thing to understand is, I mean, the Chicago Board, the role the US has in determining food prices, wheat prices, oil prices, these are all legacies of the way in which the American economy developed in the late 19th century. In the late 19th
Mhm.
century, I should say again, I have actually family history here because one of my ancestors, who became extremely rich, was a grain merchant.
Okay.
This is in the 19th century. He was based in London. He made a huge fortune, basically brokering sales of grain from the United States and bringing them to Europe and to Britain. And he used part of the money that he made to build the Greek Orthodox Cathedral here in London. But anyway, the
Mhm.
point is, the Americans were central to the whole system at that
Yeah.
time, just as they were central to the whole oil export sector, because the United States in the late 19th and early 20th century was the main oil exporter, and then it became the main oil importer, or at least the main place where oil was consumed. So it made sense to base
Mhm.
all of these things in the United States. But these are legacies, just as,
Mhm.
by the way, the metals exchange, which controls many metals prices, is based in London,
Yeah.
again as a historic overhang from the time when the British basically were the people who traded in metals. So it makes complete sense that a country that is now the world's biggest commodities producer, that produces oil, wheat, metals, energy, other types of energy, all of those things, says, look, the time has come to shift this all away from
Yeah.
the Anglo Americans, especially, as you absolutely correctly say, that having these boards in these places, or these sectors in these places, located in these places, affects the price. It means that the actual price of oil and the price of grain is to a great extent going to be shaped by what is decided in London and New York and Chicago and those sort of places. So it makes complete sense that they would do that. And it would have happened anyway in time. I mean, eventually, that's where we would have come to. And again, it makes sense also to do it within the framework of the BRICS. BRICS brings together the world's biggest manufacturer by far, which is China. Brings together the biggest commodities producer, which is Russia. It brings a lot of the oil exporters together. So obviously, it makes sense that they should try to work together to wrest control of all of these things away from the Anglo Americans. Wrest control is the word we have to use now, because all of this is being resisted. The better way would have been if all of these institutions that had existed previously had simply been allowed to democratize and evolve by themselves into something globally more equitable. But the Western powers, unsurprisingly, refuse to let that happen. And it's completely understandable that the BRICS states will do it. And as you rightly say, if it happens, it will have profound implications on the way in which the world works.
Yeah, and agriculture is a big sector, right, in the United States.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
so,
A
which is,
huge sector, but a
yeah.
declining one. I
Hmm.
mean, because again, I have contact with people who are in it. And one of the problems, apparently, is that it's very, very difficult to find young people who are prepared
Uh-huh.
to work
That's
on
true.
the farms anymore. So that the farmers are becoming much older. It's apparently most of them are now in their 60s. And, there
Mhm.
isn't a generation following them. And it's not quite as strong and healthy a sector as it once was.
Well, the U.S. government even many times they
Mm.
even making it even more difficult. Remember, Robert was on your show talking about this Amish farmer, Amos
That's right.
Miller.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were
absolutely. Yeah.
harassing him, right? And
Yeah.
he's not alone. There were some other
Yeah.
cases in the Midwest and etc. The government just making it very hard, difficult for the farmers, and sometimes impossible for various
Well,
reasons.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct, absolutely. I mean, and I mean, it's becoming over concentrated. It's becoming very corporate.
Hmm.
It's losing its way, but as you rightly said, it is still a big sector. relatively speaking, in the economy.
And going back to saying that the legacies, which is another reason which I find is still fascinating, that since there are so many things working to the Western favor, in particular Anglo-Saxon favor, why do they want to change the status quo? You see, they are the one of all the people should be the one really want to keep everything the way it is. But they can't. They have to having wars here, sanction there, and making it impossible for the people to function in the system that they built, that they benefit from. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Thank you, Sophia, for saying that. I've been trying to make this very same point to all sorts of people in London and in New York for years now. I mean, since you are the great beneficiaries of the system as it
Yes.
exists, why on earth do you want to change it? Why do you want to explode everything and destabilize everything when what you have works so well to your advantage? Well, of course, I never get any kind of rational answer to that, because, of course, they're all, as I said before, they're all obsessed with their chess games and their maneuvers and all of this. The amount of mental energy that this absorbs is very, very difficult, again, I think, for people in China to understand. You go to the media here in Britain, or you go to the media in the United States, the amount of time that is devoted to foreign policy is incredible.
Yeah. And I feel like the United States just have this obsession about power. They have to be in control
Yeah,
of everything, right?
yeah.
And when whoever have a slightest idea to be independent of, thinking and have some idea about their own country, they can't tolerate that. They just
Yeah,
have to.
exactly. Exactly.
Um, the last thing is the U.S. election. I feel like Kamala Harris is losing ground. I think there's
Yeah.
this weekend, the past weekend, it seems like multiple scandals. One of whom, which is Kamala herself, had this plagiarism
Mm-hmm.
scandal. She wrote a book that it has multiple places that people pointed out have plagiarized her, which is not surprising. I don't think she's a person who can really write a book. I don't know. I mean, I just don't think she's capable of writing a book. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a co-writing, and then there are lots of problems with that. And then of course Tim Walz also have some sexual harassment kind of a rumors going on.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Is it pretty much done that we are expecting a Trump presidency now?
No, no, it is not done, and it won't be until not just the day of the election itself, but for weeks afterwards, given the pattern that we've seen. But I agree with you. It's absolutely clear to me that she's losing momentum, or in fact, her momentum has completely stalled. There's some
Mhm.
opinion polls I understand which are now showing Trump level on the overall vote and ahead in the battleground
Yeah.
states.
Mhm.
And one senses that the ground is shifting gradually in his favor. Now, I think this is not all unsurprising because, we've discussed Kamala Harris many times. But beyond anything else, one of the major problems that she has is that she didn't fight to become the candidate. She never went
Mhm.
through a primaries process. She never went through all of those things which you're expected to do, which provide you with the training, the level of understanding and knowledge, the feel of what people want to say, so that when you go before a camera, you even, assuming you have the intellect to do it properly, you're able to go before the camera and you have your answer. Um, she's not had that. So
Yeah.
she's making missteps. And this is the problem the Democrats have landed on themselves by parachuting in an untested candidate. They didn't test her themselves. They didn't find out whether she really is actually the kind of person who can win an election. And of course, she hasn't herself tested herself.
Mhm.
She doesn't know how to conduct an election effectively or properly. So that's why she's starting to come unstuck. They're going to have they have a few weeks to turn it round. I mean, they might do. I mean, and there's all sorts of other things that might happen, as we know. So it's not a done thing, but one can start to see the ground visibly shifting in Trump's favor. And I have heard and I've heard it from people who know,
Uh-huh.
that the private polling, and we know that there is private polling. There was an article, by the way, by James Antle in the Daily Telegraph, who is, a prominent Republican, and he confirms that there is private polling. Both the Republicans and the Democrats have private opinion polls that provide them with information which is more objectively and rigorously collected than we see in the public polls. But the private polling is now apparently showing in most of the key states Donald Trump clearly ahead. And, that's also creating nerves on the Democrat side and is probably resulting in more errors.
Yeah, the way they're trying to beef her up, Obama came out lecturing people, which is surprising because I thought Obama, he even though he's not that great of a president, but I thought he's a good campaigner, right, for his own
Mm-hmm.
campaign. Well, he would come out and lecturing people and calling the black male to vote for her just because she's black. I find that's isn't that again you get they seem so easily forget what Hillary Clinton said about the deplorables, right? You
Mm-hmm.
blame the voters, you're lecturing the voters. How arrogant is that? And of course, there's a
Well,
big blowback of that, right?
Well, of course it is. I mean, it is incredibly arrogant. It is extraordinarily disdainful, and it comes across also as very manipulative and entitled. And I have to say, it reinforces my own feeling that far too many people at the top of the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, um, Tim Walz, Kamala Harris, perhaps it seems Barack Obama himself, that doesn't surprise me at all, by the way, are profoundly elitist and don't like a lot of Americans. I mean, I can say that straightforwardly. They don't like many Americans, in various lower class demographics that they don't feel comfortable mixing with.
Yeah, and the other thing is Bill Clinton also came out. Again, when you
Yeah,
listen to him, it's like, is he really helping Harris
no,
or not?
no,
Make you wonder, you know. Yeah, it's
yeah,
the distance, they have the elites versus the regular commoners. I just find it so
yeah.
incredible how out of touch they really are. It's yeah, and and
Absolutely. Very,
and
very, very untypical of American history, by the way. Whatever,
mhm,
whatever America was, whether it was truly democratic or not, American politicians in the past were connected very closely to their bases, but not anymore, it would seem.
even people like I thought both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama were pretty good. When
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
campaigning for themselves,
yeah,
they
yeah.
were pretty good, like communicating with the
Mm,
audience, communicating with regular
mm,
voters.
mm.
The connection was there, but once now they have became president, get out of the office, they seems like totally lost it. Seems to me like.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. They've lost their feel. They've lost their feel
Mhm,
for the American people. I mean, they don't have their finger on the pulse of the American people, which is what successful politicians historically in America have always had, to be good at.
mhm,
And I suspect the reason partly is because American politics has become so controlled and so managed and so manipulated
mm.
that it's difficult to keep that sense of connection that used to be very much a part of American politics once upon a time.
Now, part of the reason I really think she's done is even Saturday Night Live was laughing about her. They were making skits
Yeah,
laughing about her,
I
which
know.
I find surprising, so
Yeah, yeah,
everybody can see
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, they don't understand. Also, I think that they really don't understand people very well. I mean,
Hmm.
I think that even when they try to be, talk in a more simple way, they
Yeah.
do it in a way that is frankly artificial and
Mhm.
unnatural, and people see right through it immediately.
Yeah, you can't fake those things. It's very
You can't.
interesting,
You
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
No, not
Hmm.
not really. No.
No. Okay. All right. I think that's all I have. I'll talk to you again. Thank you so much. I know you're really, really busy, so thank you so much. I'll talk to you next time.
My great pleasure. I mean, thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.